Alexander, and I'm a rising junior at Menlo Atherton High School. This is the first milestone for my project, the robotic arm, or 3D printed robotic arm. What it does is when I flex these sensors, which will be attached to my hand, like running down my fingers, then the hand on the robot arm will bend as much as I do, and mirroring my fingers. It does this by reading these flex sensors and sending the values to the Arduino. How that works is these flex sensors have an amount of conductive material inside of them, and when that bends, the conductive material gets farther away from all the other particles, so it increases the resistance of the flex sensor. The Arduino measures this by measuring the difference between the 5-volt pin here that it sends into the flex sensors versus what it gets out in the ground pin here. Then it maps that to a certain amount of degrees that the servos are meant to go to by just a little map function about like how much resistance is what kind of degrees. It's basically just to map how much it flexes into degrees for the hand to flex, so it's accurate. It reads that, it reads the value, the resistance, and then sends that to the servo, and they turn. Each flex sensor has a corresponding servo, which it turns, and all of them can turn at once, or just two to mirror my hand exactly. The servos are powered by this battery, which goes to a voltage regulator here, which steps it down from 7.2 volts to about 5 volts, because the servos can only handle that many volts at once. All of this runs off of, or is controlled by, this Arduino here. This computer is only to power the Arduino and to upload code to it when need be. So, some challenges I had while building this were the power. I originally used a power supply where I could set the amperage and the voltage, but that wasn't working after I rebuilt the circuit 3 times. It did work once. I don't know why, but it did. And then today, however, it stopped working. So I fixed the connector to the battery, which I used to connect to the breadboard, and found another voltage resistor that would actually work with this battery. Plugged that in, and now it works. My other challenge building it was just essentially designing this circuit, because there were just a lot of little things, like all the servos had to get the same amount of power, so they had to be put in parallel. All this, the resistors, none of these resistors can touch. I don't know if you can see them, but they're essentially exposed wires, so none of them can touch. And it's a solderless breadboard, so I don't have that much space. And yes, and there's a lot of wires here, if you couldn't tell. Thank you.